In the heart of a high-security juvenile prison, where troubled souls and broken dreams were locked away, one inmate stood above all, Malik Reyes, the most dangerous child ever to be incarcerated. At just 14, his name sent chills down the spines of even the most hardened guards. His crimes were the stuff of nightmares, his intelligence unnerving, and his presence alone was enough to command both fear and respect. Unlike the other young offenders, who were merely misguided or unfortunate, Malik was something else entirely. There was no remorse in his cold, piercing eyes, only a quiet, calculated menace. He had grown up in the darkest corners of the city, molded by violence, sharpened by betrayal. He was not just a product of the streets, he was their master. By the time he was 12, he had built a reputation that even grown men feared. His crimes ranged from orchestrating robberies to taking lives with an eerie precision that made it clear he was no ordinary child. The prison administration knew they had something different on their hands the moment he arrived. Standard juvenile facilities were not built for children like him. He wasn't just another rebellious kid who had fallen into crime. He was a predator in a cage full of prey. The guards treated him like a ticking bomb, always watching, always waiting for the moment he would explode. Even among the most notorious young criminals, he was an enigma, a ghost. He spoke little, observed everything, and never showed a trace of fear. Inside the walls of Black Ridge Juvenile Facility, survival was a brutal game. Fights broke out daily. Bullies ruled over the weak, and alliances were formed only to be broken in moments of desperation. But Malik? He needed no allies. He operated alone, and that was enough. The other inmates either stayed out of his way or sought his protection, hoping that aligning with him meant a chance at survival. It was not just his ruthlessness that made him a legend within those walls. It was his mind. He had a way of predicting people's actions, reading their weaknesses, and exploiting them effortlessly. Guards who tried to intimidate him found themselves being played like puppets. Inmates who dared to challenge him learned the hard way that Malik never lost a fight. He was not the biggest, nor the strongest, but he was the most dangerous. Rumors spread about him like wildfire. Some said he had taken down 3 inmates twice his size without breaking a sweat. Others whispered that he had nearly escaped from a previous facility before being caught at the last second. No one knew what was true, but everyone knew one thing. Malik Reyes was not someone to be underestimated, and yet, even in a place built to break young criminals, Malik was already thinking ahead. He wasn't meant for a cage, and he knew it. He had no intention of staying in Black Ridge forever. He was going to escape. Malik Reyes spent countless hours in quiet observation, his mind continuously churning with possibilities, even behind the cold, unyielding walls of Black Ridge Juvenile Facility. Every creak of the corridor, every shift change of the guards, and every whispered conversation among inmates was a piece of the puzzle he was determined to solve. His plan for escape was not born of a momentary impulse, but was the result of meticulous planning and ruthless calculation. He began by mapping out the daily routines of the facility. Malik noted the precise timing of guard rotations, the blind spots in the surveillance system, and the moments when the prison corridors fell into near silence. His ability to absorb and recall these details was uncanny, a trait honed on the unforgiving streets long before his incarceration. Each observation was carefully catalogued in his mind, forming the framework of a daring blueprint that promised freedom at its culmination. Knowing that brute force alone could not guarantee his escape, Malik set about manipulating the very people who upheld the prison's order. He identified a handful of guards who, beneath their disciplined exteriors, harbored doubts and personal grievances against the administration. With a mix of subtle intimidation and calculated kindness, he approached one particularly disillusioned officer, appealing to his desire for respect and recognition. Malik whispered of shared secrets and mutual benefits, promising that a small act of rebellion could restore a sense of control to those trapped by the oppressive system. In return for discreet assistance, the officer provided Malik with key information: the locations of hidden maintenance tunnels, unmonitored corridors, and the exact moments when security was at its weakest. Simultaneously, Malik sowed discord among the inmates. He convinced a select group of fellow prisoners, each with their own bitter histories and vendettas against the prison system, that unity in chaos was their best chance at survival. In hushed tones and in the privacy of dimly lit corners, he painted vivid pictures of a momentary uprising where the old order would collapse and new power would be theirs. His promises of a share in the fleeting taste of freedom resonated with those who had long suffered under the constant tyranny of prison life. Their loyalty, forged in mutual desperation, became an unspoken pact, sealed by fear and ambition. The culmination of his efforts was scheduled for a night when the elements themselves seemed to conspire with him. Heavy rain pounded against the outer walls, and sporadic flashes of lightning briefly illuminated the labyrinthine corridors of Blackridge. As the storm raged outside, a carefully orchestrated disturbance erupted within. Distractions had been set in motion, a series of minor skirmishes and misdirected alarms designed to scatter the attention of the guards. Amid the ensuing chaos, Malik moved with calculated precision. He led his loyal few through the twisting hallways toward a rarely used service gate, a hidden exit he had discovered through weeks of patient surveillance. Every step was a blend of audacity and exacting timing. Malik's mind, ever vigilant and razor-sharp, guided him through the labyrinth of uncertainty. In that fleeting, electrified moment, he transformed from a captive into a master strategist, demonstrating that even a young, dangerous child could defy the seemingly unbreakable chains of confinement through intellect, manipulation, and sheer force of will. The plan was perfect. The execution was flawless, but fate had other ideas. Malik Reyes moved through the corridors of Blackridge Juvenile Facility like a ghost, his footsteps silent against the cold concrete floor. Behind him, his small band of trusted inmates followed closely, their hearts pounding as the echoes of distant chaos filled the prison. Fights had broken out in multiple wings, just as he had planned. Guards scrambled to control the sudden outburst of violence, leaving key areas unguarded. Security cameras flickered in and out, distorted by a well-placed electrical disruption Malik had arranged through a smuggled wire strip. As he reached the final checkpoint, his fingers brushed against the heavy steel door that separated him from the outside world. Freedom was within his grasp. The service gate ahead led to a maintenance tunnel, a rarely used passage that ended just beyond the prison walls. Beyond that, the stormy night sky, open roads, and the promise of a new life. But something was wrong. A chilling voice shattered the tension like glass. "Where do you think you're going, Reyes?" The hallway flooded with harsh white light as the emergency power kicked in. Malik turned, his mind racing, calculating every possible move in an instant. Standing before him were 6 armed guards, their weapons raised, their expressions unreadable. Behind them, the warden himself loomed, his eyes burning with satisfaction. Warden Grant, a man as ruthless as the system he upheld. He had anticipated this. Malik clenched his fists. How? Then he saw it. A rat. One of his own had betrayed him. A scrawny, terrified boy named Luis, the weakest member of the group, stood beside the guards, his face pale with fear. He wouldn't even meet Malik's gaze. "You really thought we wouldn't be watching you?" Warden Grant's voice was cold, amused. "We've been waiting for this, Reyes." Malik's mind screamed at him to run, but it was too late. The guards moved in fast. A taser crackled. Pain shot through his body as 10,000 volts surged through his chest, locking his muscles in place. He dropped to his knees, gasping as his vision blurred. More shocks followed. 1, 2, 3. The air smelled of burning skin. His limbs twitched uncontrollably. His crew scattered. Some fought back, but they were outnumbered, overpowered. Within minutes, the rebellion was crushed. Boots slammed into ribs. Batons cracked against skulls. The taste of blood filled Malik's mouth, but the pain barely registered. He had come so close. The last thing he saw before darkness swallowed him was Warden Grant's smirk. "You think this place was bad? Wait till you see where we're sending you next." Then everything went black. Malik Reyes woke up to pain. His body ached from the brutal takedown. His wrists burned from the tight restraints cutting into his skin. The The cold steel of shackles weighed down his ankles, and the dull hum of a transport vehicle's engine filled his ears. The rhythmic rocking told him he was moving. But to where? His vision was still blurry, his mind sluggish from the after effects of the electric shocks. He tried to move, but the restraints held him in place. Across from him sat two guards in riot gear, their rifles held casually but ready. Their eyes, however, weren't casual. They were watching him like he was a caged animal, a predator that might strike at any moment. The Blackridge Juvenile Facility was no longer his prison. He had pushed too far, proven too dangerous, and now he was being sent somewhere worse. The prison transport van rattled over rough roads, the storm from the night before still raging outside. Thunder rumbled like distant gunfire, the occasional flash of lightning illuminating the interior through the small, grated window. Rain hammered against the metal roof, drowning out any conversation between the guards. Not that they needed to speak. Their job was simple: deliver the package. Malik Reyes was that package. Hours passed before the vehicle slowed. The air inside felt heavier, suffocating. Malik knew whatever was waiting for him on the other side of those reinforced doors was designed to break him. Then he saw it. As the van came to a stop, the massive concrete walls of Ironwood Maximum Security Prison loomed over him like a beast from a nightmare. This was no juvenile detention center. This was a fortress meant to house the worst of the worst, men who had long since lost their humanity. The gates creaked open with a deep, mechanical groan, welcoming him into a world where survival wasn't just a challenge. It was a war. The van doors opened and cold, rain-soaked air rushed in. A towering guard in black tactical gear grabbed Malik by the collar and yanked him out, his feet barely touching the ground before he was slammed onto the wet pavement. "Welcome home, kid," the guard sneered, tightening the chains around Malik's wrists before dragging him forward. Malik's sharp eyes scanned the surroundings as they pulled him into the facility. Layers of barbed wire curled around the walls like hungry snakes. Sniper towers stood tall in every corner, armed guards watching from above, fingers resting lightly on their triggers. This place wasn't meant to rehabilitate, it was meant to consume. As he was marched through the towering gates, inmates, real criminals, lifers, murderers, pressed against the bars, jeering and laughing at the sight of a child being thrown into their world. "They sent a kid in here? Ain't no way he's lasting a week," one voice cackled. "Fresh meat," another hollered. But Malik didn't flinch. He didn't lower his gaze. He met every pair of hungry, predatory eyes with the same cold stare that had made him feared back in Blackridge. He had escaped death before. He had fought worse odds, and he wasn't about to break now. This wasn't the end. This was just another battlefield. The iron gates of Ironwood Maximum Security Prison slammed shut behind Malik Reyes with a deafening finality. The echoes of steel on steel rang through the air like a death sentence. The air inside was thick with sweat, blood, and desperation, a place where hope had long been buried under layers of brutality. Malik had seen violence before. He had lived it, shaped himself into something stronger because of it. But this was different. This was not a juvenile facility. This was a war zone. The ruthless inmates. From the moment he stepped into the main block, he could feel the eyes on him. Predators watching prey. The inmates here weren't just street criminals or gang members. They were monsters. Lifers, hardened killers, men with nothing left to lose. They towered over him, their bodies covered in scars, tattoos that told stories of past crimes and victories in blood. What's this? They letting kids in now? A towering man with a snake tattoo curled around his neck sneered. "Looks like fresh meat to me," another chuckled darkly. Malik didn't respond. He just watched, measured, calculated. He had to show them that he wasn't weak, because in this place, weakness was a death sentence. Harsher rules. Ironwood had its own laws, ones not written on any official prison document. The guards didn't care. They didn't step in unless absolutely necessary, and sometimes they encouraged the violence just to keep the inmates in check. The strong ruled, the weak suffered. Protection came at a price, and debts were paid in blood. Respect wasn't given, it was taken. And Malik had no allies. His first test came in the form of Gordo, a 250-pound enforcer for one of the prison's most feared gangs. "Listen, kid," Gordo said, blocking Malik's path in the mess hall. "You don't belong here, but if you want to stay alive, you're gonna work for us now. You'll do what we say. Run messages. Hide things when we need you to, or—" His thick fingers clenched into a fist. "You won't last a week." Malik looked up at him, his mind already working. He had two choices: submit or make a statement. He chose the latter. Without warning, Malik struck, a sharpened plastic fork buried deep into Gordo's hand. The giant howled in pain, and before he could react, Malik slammed his tray into Gordo's face, sending him sprawling. The mess hall went silent. Malik knew the rules. If you weren't the biggest, you had to be the most dangerous. And now everyone had seen it. But survival here wasn't just about violence. It was about outsmarting the system, knowing when to fight and when to disappear. Survival becomes impossible. The days turned into weeks, and the challenges only grew. The guards pushed him harder, watching for any excuse to break him. The gangs wanted him dead for making a statement. Even the loners, the silent predators, saw him as a threat. Ironwood wasn't just a prison. It was a battlefield where every moment was a fight for survival. And Malik Reyes was prepared for war.